You. Thanks everybody for hanging on to the end of the day. I'm sure it's Friday, Friday feeling, time to pack up and go for that nice walk. It's a lovely day here, this side of the world, wherever. I'm sure, I don't know if people are local or not. I'm based in New Hampshire in Portsmouth. I was lucky enough to go to the Nerd Summit a couple of years ago, the one before last March that was cancelled. Was very, very inspired there. Met some lovely people, great venue, and thought someday, I'll be brave enough to do my own talk. So this is a nice for me to do a virtual one that gets my toes wet. Um, so this is going to be a talk about how building an Alexa app helped. It was an Alexa app for imposter syndrome, and by building this app, it helped treat my imposter syndrome. My name is Louise Hayes. I'm a senior engineer with WorkGrid Software, and you can follow me or connect with me on Twitter. I love Twitter at Lou Hayes 3. So this talk will have quite a bit of technical demo side to it, but it's a very easy one as well. It's a good one for getting your toes wet with AI, with Alexa, with LaMDA. I work in that area as well. Not Alexa. I work with AWS a lot. But just this is my fun side. I'm very passionate about Alexa and what it can do for our world, and AI in general, as a kind of a side interest. A little bit about me. I've been in computers a long time. When I started learning to code in college, things were very different. I was one of very few females at the time. I really loved it. And I sort of spent a long time in the industry working for various different companies like SAP, and kind of dipped in and out of coding, but gradually got more into maintenance and performance of big systems. It wasn't as creative as I would have liked, but it was great. But eventually, finally kind of pivoted to get back into coding a couple of years ago. I ran my own business for a while, which had small and large customers, sometimes just building websites, sometimes doing SEO, sometimes writing scripts for database manipulation of large data. So I kept dipping into the design and creative side, but it really wasn't challenging the way I wanted it to be. So I moved to America 5 years ago and decided, right, I'm going to go and skill up and learn what's latest and greatest and get back into coding. And I went to a boot camp, and then I got a job with WorkGrid, which is an endeavor of Liberty Mutual, and we make a digital assistant. So I'm a real big women in tech advocate. I like volunteering and helping out with teaching kids in the community how to code, especially the girls in middle school age when they start to kind of think it's too tricky or too nerdy. I'm a mentor to some mom coders, with Moms Who Code. I have a podcast. It's less often than I'd like, called Raising Code, with some mom coders, and we like to do talks about coding with a busy life, but it's kind of aimed towards newbies. And I entered a hackathon with an app called RealUp. That was an imposter syndrome app with the Moms Can Code. I recommend hackathons for anyone just to learn to meet people and all that stuff. And yeah, love Code Newbie, love learning, kind of obsessed with the whole thing, always listening to podcasts and stuff like that, but really just trying to get more, more sort of diversity in tech. That's a big passion of mine. So this is the company I work for, WorkGrid. As I said, we're part of Liberty Mutual, but we actually have other customers as well. So we make a digital assistant that's really quite clever. It has a lot of its architecture based on AWS in the cloud, and it has a chatbot, which is the AI part, and it allows you to automate a lot of your other backend systems in one central place, to make your employees' day easier. That's the idea about it. So that's a little bit about where I work. Today's talk will primarily be focused on these sections here. Imposter syndrome, a little bit about that. Alexa, what that is. LaMDA, a little bit about that. And then I'll demo building an Alexa skills app with a LaMDA. and then we'll have time for questions at the end. If I miss your questions, let me know. I'll try and remember to check the chat, but sometimes it's better at the end. So I guess I'll start with, if you've ever suffered from, debilitating self-doubt, feelings of inadequacy, fear of failure at work. We've all had those days. And have you ever felt like you're a fraud, or at any moment you'll be found out, exposed for being incompetent and underqualified for your position? Then you've probably experienced a phenomenon getting more and more known as we go further on in the years, as imposter syndrome. It is a thing. There are studies to show that 80% of sufferers are women, that anyone who's questioned on it in the questions so far, it's an average of 70% of people are admitting, yeah, I have that, and it significantly impacts my work or my day. It's usually high achieving people that suffer from it more. You have a difficulty accepting praise, a reluctance to seize opportunities, a reluctance to accept promotions or new projects because you're feeling not ready, a reluctance to highlight personal contributions to projects. Procrastination is a big thing. It's like almost immobilizing. It also tends to lead to workaholism. So you tend to work harder and longer and more because of this feeling of incompetence, that you overcompensate. So you end up, it doesn't help you in the end because you're stressed, and then you work harder and you're still stressed. But the good thing is that there's a lot of things you can do to deal with it. Things like talking about it, being talks like this, talking to your colleagues, talking to your friends, your family. If the team that you're working on is aware of it, then it helps, because it gives them context for why you're reluctant to do certain things or why you're struggling that day. Having a diverse team really helps. Having a company that focuses on diversity. I'm lucky that where I work, we're very conscious of that. We're always striving to balance things, and it really does make a difference if you feel like you have a team that is supportive and aware and friendly to all kinds of people. Educating people about it so that they know what it is. It's a really good tool for dealing with this. Mentorship, having someone you can rely on in work. I kind of focus on this on work because that's where I found it more than anything. But having someone you can just check in with and say, I'm just having a tough day. Can I sound some work off you? And it really helps. Celebrate your accomplishments. Focus on them, because you do have them. You're just not. It's just whichever way you're kind of lining up your thoughts that day. These are good tips for just life in general, never mind work. And then challenge your thinking. Just make sure you're not putting a spin on it, an imposter syndrome spin on it. And even just challenge your work. Take on something that's difficult, like I did with this, what I thought was difficult with this Alexa, and prove to yourself that you can do it. So I think it's good to start with just, I'm not sure who knows what here, but you all know the iPhone and Siri would be the voice UI of the iPhone, which is like the back end hardware. So I'm focusing this talk on Alexa, but there's lots of other voice assistants out there, using AI, artificial intelligence, using ML, machine learning. And the Echo is the device that is associated with the Amazon Alexa. So the Alexa is the voice UI part, the user interface, and the Echo would be the hardware part. So it's something that most people have now. They either have the Alexa one, or they might have the Google one, or the other ones around. And just a little bit about how it works behind the scenes. You have the user will ask Echo, open Real Up Fact, for example, which is the app that I made. And that's like an utterance. And this invokes the Alexa service, which is a custom built skill. So it's an Alexa skill that's behind the scenes being triggered by the voice of the user. This sends an event which is called an intent. It's a little bit technical, but it doesn't really matter if you don't get it all. It sends an intent to the Lambda, which triggers the Lambda. So you don't realize it, but every time you speak to your Alexa, there is a skill, and that skill is triggering a Lambda behind the scenes. And you'll find out a little bit more about what that Lambda is. It's like an application program running in the cloud, basically. Like a little application in the cloud server of Amazon. And the Lambda responds with something, whatever your skill is trying to do. Tell someone the weather, tell them the time, or in my case, give them an inspirational imposter syndrome curing quote. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I don't know, failure is success and progress, whatever quotes I have in the app. And it sends it back to Alexa. Alexa sends this as an audio, which involves the text to speech part, to the Echo device. So think of Alexa like a virtual assistant developed by Amazon for its Echo and all its Echo Dot devices. They're usually $50 to $200, depending on whether you get a screen attached or not. You'd swear I was working for Amazon, wouldn't you? But I'm a big fan of them. We have an Alexa in a few different places in our house, and I can actually call my teenagers who are in the basement bedrooms from my bedroom, and it's really helpful. And there's an announcement you can put on it that makes a mad sound in the mornings and gets everybody up, if they're sleeping in too late. So it's not just for it. I think Alexa has a lot of area for expansion and use in everyday life, not just for the weather and telling the time and adding to your shopping list. So the AI technology, it's using AI technology, cloud-based voice technology. And if you think of a skill, which is what we're going to make today, like an app for Alexa, and just think Alexa is like if you're making a front-end website, it's just another UI. It's a Vice UI, but it's another UI. So this is just what I said in more detail. Another way of looking at it. Somebody asking for the weather, triggering the Alexa service custom skill, talking to the Lambda back here. And sometimes, not today, but this is how you can imagine it being used to connect using a different kind of IoT device, which is basically checking the temperature. So you could imagine the use cases that are going on now for Alexa. In today's talk, we won't go that far, but it's just to show you the capacity. And it's using a lot of the Amazon services behind the scenes for you that you don't realize. So they have fantastically advanced in these areas over the last 10 years, such as speech recognition, natural language understanding, text-to-speech translation, and triggering the Lambda function every time you use your Echo. And we don't need to know about these to build an Alexa skill. That's the good thing. It's just there behind the scenes. Just to talk about Lambda for a second, it's really changed the way companies design software because it's taking away the need to deploy and provision and manage your own servers. It's all done in the cloud. That means it gets for free, or not for free necessarily, but it can be very cheap. The financial budgeting improvements are phenomenal for companies, big companies, like you hear stories of Netflix and companies like that switch to cloud-based applications like Lambda, and they're just reaping the rewards, and they don't have to worry about the security aspect or the performance or the scaling if their applications get busy, because it's all handled for you by AWS in the cloud. So it's even good for newbies who haven't used it before to go in and play around and create a Lambda, because it's free until you hit, I think, is it something like a million requests? So you can get away with not paying any bills for years if you just have a little website there for yourself and your customers. And as you get more traffic, it's all about usage-based billing. So that's what's so new about it and so cool about it for us people. We can play around. You do need to enter a credit card to set up an Amazon account to use all this, but once you can set up safety triggers to make sure you don't get billed in case you accidentally create something that costs money. You can have a Lambda in so many different ways. It can be used as a website. It can write to a database. It can write to a storage called S3, but it can also be used to route traffic to different things like finance application or an accounting report application, and it means that if one goes down, the other one doesn't. So it sort of separates out all your applications and makes it super safe. And it's event driven as well. So and the user sees benefits, and you're separating it all so that it's all very fast and separated out. But in a very high level, that's just good to know where the Lambda fits in and why it's such a phenomenal advancement. And it is open for different languages. I mean, there's Python, Java, Node. That's just a few languages when you go into a Lambda and start creating code. We'll see this later on. So if you think of when you think of your Lambda, it's the first step in creating an Alexa. You create the back end. Think of the Lambda as the back end part of your front end. So if Alexa is your UI, a Lambda will be your back end. It sort of feeds the data into your Alexa once your Alexa is triggered. So we're going to look at the Amazon console and just demo creating a Lambda. So let me just go into my browser here. So what you will see is, I can move that down a little bit. When you first sign, when you first launch Amazon, you use the console.aws.amazon.com account. It's a really big service. There's a lot of things in here, but by all means, you should go and create an account, and you will have to enter your credit card, and you kind of land on this entry page here. And you can set up safety measures in billing to help you to manage not going up in price. But essentially, there's a humongous amount of services that you don't ever need to go into. And we're just going to focus on Lambda. And you can quite happily just go into Lambda and nothing else and do a lot with that. And there's a lot of tutorials as well. But today we're just going to show you how easy it is to create a Lambda if you have no idea, with a little bit of technical knowledge. You can go in here and do a create, give it a name. We'll call it nerd. Let's see. Call it nerd test. Let's do all lowercase. Nerd test 2021, and create function. Actually, I'm just going to do that again because I want to create it from the pre-built. Let's call it nerd test 2021 8B. And what I was going to show you was you can use a blueprint, which is worth having a look at because they have a lot of cool blueprints there ready for you. Or you can browse the serverless repo, which is where I found the one that I liked for my app. And then you have a choice of Hello World and all these different ready-made kits. This is a trivia skill one, a how-to skill one. You have Python ones. So there's a ton of information and blueprints and samples available. But if you just, when you're going in to create for your first one, if you want to follow along what I'm doing, you just click here on this browse serverless repo and then go into your fact skill. This is the one that suits what I wanted to demo today best. It comes ready-made with all the code. It's got a whole code behind it. And you hit deploy, and that's going to kick that off for you. And all we have to do then is change the code in one place to suit our needs. So this app is an inspirational quote app for imposter syndrome. So I want to add my own inspirational quotes to it so that when the next part of the demo, the Alexa app triggers this Lambda, that it gives back the data that we want. So this happened to me before in another demo. So this should just work. But for some reason, I get this when I try and open up too many sessions at the same time. So I'm going to show you one that I created for you yesterday. And I believe it is this nerd test one. And really what it should do is just, once you hit that deploy, it should bring you in here. So, and what you do is you go into the code, you go into this index file here, and you can basically just search by doing a command F for this EN data that I'm, this EN data const here. This is actually a Node language because that's the language I'm most familiar with, but there are other languages like Python and Java that you can use instead, whatever you're more familiar with. And Go, most of the languages are supported. It's getting more and more every couple of months. So this is the EN data, and I basically changed the name here, and I changed the word. I think it comes as a space fact default, and I just changed the word space to my nerd here. And then I copied in, there's an array here, and it comes with a load of space facts, and I just replaced them with my own inspirational quotes, like turn excuses into results. It's only a thought. All of this is just my own. I just typed it freestyle, and then I click on deploy here, and that's deployed. And that's all you need to do here for the entire coding for your Lambda. You also need to copy the ARN for the next part of the demo. But essentially, you're sort of done with the console for AWS. And the next part is you build your UI, which is your Alexa, and you have to go into your Alexa developer console for this, and you do have to create another account for this for one time. And when you do create it, when you register, it will bring you into this dashboard where you can just create a skill. So I'm going to try and create a skill interactively, but if I can't, we'll have to go back to the demo one as well. So again, it's just a few clicks, and this is why I thought it would be a good talk. You put in your skill name, Nerd Test 2021. Again, you're picking a custom skill, and you're picking provision your own. And this is because I just want a basic Lambda to be triggered by my Alexa skill. I don't need my Alexa to do anything other than trigger the Lambda. But you can also pick Alexa hosted, and there's a ton of pre-built Lambdas behind built for you, and you don't even need to go off to the Lambda to create it yourself. So it's worth having a look. But for this talk, I wanted to show you just how easy it was to do it yourself. And once you've selected those, you create your skill. And remember, this is our UI part, and it's really fun. And I'm going to pick a fact skill. And it should take a few minutes. And eventually, it's as it says here, it's building the Vice model. And whenever you're doing a live demo on Amazon, you always have to wait for Amazon. So hopefully it does what we say. Now this looks like a busy page, but essentially it has a little check over here, a skill builder check. And there's just a couple of things you need to do. You need to create your name, create some intents, which is some words that the user would use to trigger your Alexa app. You want to connect it to an endpoint, which is a backend link, which is our Lambda, and you want to build it. So if we start off with the name, we want to give it a little name like we call it maybe Nerd Up, and it needs to be 2 words. So it kind of helps you out. And every time you do that change, you have to save so that accepts it. It's really, I think, very user friendly. The next thing we want to do is just close down some of these messages. Thanks very much. You want to go into your endpoint and copy in the ARN that we grabbed from the previous screen. And that's it there. And I'm going to save that. It's not in the correct format. Maybe I put in a few extra spaces. Let's try it again. So let me just double check that one.
Looks like you posted in a Google Docs link. Not.
Okay, copy ARN, copied. That's definitely copied. Okay. Oh, I did, yeah. There we go. Oh, so that should work. Great. So that's done. And the next part is going into our this interaction model is basically where you build your skill, and you have a lot of capability in here You can set up rules that if they say one thing, you suggest back something else to them, and then ask them another question, and then they say something else, and then you can suggest another question. Here we're just going really simple. We're just going to we're basically just going to add some intents very quickly to make we want to make sure that we have like at least one thing that our user can say to trigger our our Alexa. So what we want to say is, we just want to go into, add an intent. We can say, something like inspire me. Something like that. And then you can say, let's go into bulk. And you could then just enter in something like, inspire me, something like give me a nerd up quote, anything like this. And you save them. And you save your build. And I think that's pretty much it for building it. But the good thing about it is you can actually go in here to test your Alexa. Now, if you wanted to test it for real on a phone, you can connect your phone up to your you can actually if you have an Alexa app on your phone, which most people do, because that's how you download apps, then you would start up your Alexa app on your phone. If you are signed in to the same account on your Alexa portal here that you are on your phone, then you will see your blueprint mode of your app and you can test it on your phone. But for today, for speed reasons, they also offer an opportunity for you to test it here. And you can just say something like open NerdUp.
I have a few skills that can help.
Or you can just say inspire me.
Okay, here's inspire me. Let me tell you an inspirational quote, act or accept. Anonymous.
And just to show you one that I set up yesterday, normally when you say open the NerdUp test, it will say to you, here's your inspirational quote. And it is that simple. But you can put in a lot more in here, like of things you want your user to say, and it will just keep running through and giving you different quotes. I'm just thinking about it. But so as you can see, this text here is actually coming. This turn your focus from the past to the future is the text that you're setting up in your Lambda, which is back here. So that's that line there. And it'll just keep looping through because the Lambda is already created with all the logic and we're just changing the data here. And the Alexa is kind of already geared to call the Lambda. So they're already pre-configured with tons and tons of code in the background that we don't have to worry about. So I know that, you didn't get to see the Lambda being created right on the spot. For some reason, I had that error, but I hope you get a feel for how quick it is, even to mess around, even if it doesn't work. And I literally can create the two of those in 5 or 6 minutes and then tweak them till the cows come home. And the next step here would be for me to open up my phone and actually enable it. And you do actually have to put it live. And to put it live, you have to go through a distribution few steps. So it does take a few days to do that part. You fill out all this and they make sure that you're not trying to take anybody's data privately. And then you can do what I did, which was it's open for the world. anyone in any country pretty much just has to enable it on their phone. And if I go to my Echo now, I can say, you know, open Reel Up Fact, and it gives me a quote that I tell my kids, see, get out of bed, you have to do some clever things. So, I mean, that's primarily the demo. And just to finish off, so we've created our Alexa, which was adding a skill. We use our interaction model, and we used intents, which are what the user wants to say. And we send back some data, and we built it by linking it to a backend Lambda. Simple. And you know, there's lots of capabilities there to connect it to real dynamic data. Like if instead of going to a static array, you can link to perhaps weather or something more dynamic, like a database somewhere that you have. I know that we created an app recently in a hackathon where we set up a sports app that allowed me to say, you know, log my results from my workout. Where do I stand on the leaderboard? And it was all dynamic. So yeah, there's a lot of potential there. So that's the talk. If there's any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more sort of about your outcomes for this, because I mean, the talk title was how it helped you improve your help your imposter syndrome. What were some of the outcomes that you experienced from it?
I think that, you know, having, it helped me when I joined the hackathon and made the app, and that the fact that we won the app, it really helped me to meet new people. It helped me to realize that I'm not the only one that struggles with imposter syndrome. We built the app to help other people, and it opened up the topic and made it seem like actually it's quite common. I'm not alone. Plus just having the challenge of creating something like this and understanding it and realizing that I had no clue at the start. I never thought I could do something like this. The fact that my kids can come up to the Echo on the counter and say, oh, let's launch Mom's app. And I just think it helped with the whole, you know, I did that, and what else can I do? So it was the whole, I think it was the whole confidence building part, and learning that it's very common, that there are lots of triggers, but there's also lots of things that can help you, and to be more aware, you know, that there are things that can help, like talking about it and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think joining the women who, the Moms Can Code group, joining the Women Who Code in Boston as well. They're very supportive groups for struggling with this kind of thing. And I just think I got great feedback from people in work as well. When I did this talk the first time, they were like, fair play, that's great. You know, I think we need more of these to get people talking about it. Plus, I think I want people to know how easy it is to jump on AWS and start creating these things, not just for their own business, but for their customers and for themselves. Like if you, if I can exit this. If you look at the amount of resources that we have, so that's the app that I created called Reel Up. That was in the hackathon. But if you do look at any of this, the AWS documentation for Alexa, they've got so many tutorials. They have so much going on, and it's changing all the time. So even for myself, dipping into it like every now and again, they're adding more and more tutorials. They really want to help people to get up and running as quickly as possible with very little experience. So I would advise you to play around with the developer. I will be posting the link to the slides. I think I gave them to Rick, so at some point they will be attached to the talk. All the links are there. So if you want to play around and log in and create your accounts, but even if it was just to host your own website on the and build up to creating an Alexa, I would recommend it. There's so much you can do with the Amazon side of it. When you create an account, you can check with your billing dashboard and make sure you can set up rules to say, email me if it goes over $5 or whatever. So it's not, you know, it's quite possible to learn a lot with just playing around.
I have a question.
Yes.
I use my smart device, and I won't say their name right now or it's going to get them all activated, but every Wednesday I host this thing where we work until from 9:30 until 10:25, then we take a 10-minute break, and then we start again. And my job is to alert people at 9:20, at 10:25, 10:35, 11:25, 11:35. So I'm always saying, you know, smart device, set an alarm for 10:25. Then I repeat it for 10:35. And I would like to just, how hard do you think it would be to build something where it would just set all those alarms with one command versus having to say them all?
I have no idea, but I know that I have seen lots of like you can change the logic of your Alexa to respond back with a question based on what the user says. So I know that you can definitely send back a different response and maybe multiple responses. What I don't know is whether you can time it. And I'm sure you can. It's completely like once you create one section of code, it's like if you're a coder, you're getting into the depths of like your language. Let's say you build it in Node or you build it in Java or whatever. When you're in that code, it's like any other program. And if you can somehow keep track of the time and fetch the data you need, and then there is a way to respond back. So it should be a case of just counting the time, like setting a timer, and then prompting. I think that would be fairly handy. And the blueprints are phenomenal for that. I've played around with a few blueprints where they already have sample prompts of the user and responses. So then what you have to do is just go, I want to change that response to another question. And it's a bit tricky to set it up. You have to read up on it for a couple of hours. But the blueprints get you set up and you're looking at code. You're not inventing it from scratch. You're just tweaking it. So you would have to invest a bit of time in getting it right because you're talking about a completely custom type of logic. But yeah, I'd say it'd be possible. It'd be fun to try it out too. And you'd learn a lot in the process.
Thank you.
Yeah. There may even be something that does it already. You can have a look at all these ready-made blueprints. If we go to the if you actually just go to the very first intro, you can probably yeah, maybe if we go in here and just create a new skill, you'll get to see all the different types. It's the quickest way to see what they have. Because somebody else has asked about it and they're kind of keeping their ear to the ground and they're adding all the time. So I would say that there's a lot. You might want to do it this way, get Alexa to host it for you. Then you get this cool button. I can show you. If I look at my skills, think of one that I did like this, maybe this one. If you host it with Alexa, you're able to do the coding live on the Alexa. So I have not on this one, but once you create one that you host with Alexa, you can code it from here and you don't even have to go into the Lambda. It might be easier for you to start with. I think this was my test here. Let's just go. So it should, yeah. So this is one that I created from a blueprint, and it came with all this code. And again, this is Node. I don't know if they're all Node, but I don't remember selecting. So I think it is Node. So the hosting on Alexa is new. It wasn't there like last year. And they've started with Node and then they eventually roll out to other languages. So I don't know if that's any help to you. But if you don't have that skill set, you can create it yourself in Lambda and do your own language, do a different language there. But you know, a lot of the skills are the same. They have a lot of the same code. And you just have to familiarize with it. And then it's just like any other program. And usually you have to just find out where it's being launched from. Yeah, and there's even logs that come with it. So you can see the logs here. So as you test it over here in your test by saying, you know, open up my app, you get to look in the logs here and you can see, you can put in logs everywhere, hitting, you know, if you need to help yourself. So it's quite clever. Any other questions?
Excuse me. First of all, thank you. This is wonderful. You mentioned that it takes a while for the skill to be approved for general release.
Yeah.
If you make a change to it, does it take that same amount of time?
Depends on the change, but if you change the data, no. Like if you're just changing the Lambda part or the code, it doesn't have to be re-released. I mean, the real time is, it can be just a couple of days, but the real time is making sure that you are who you say you are, and that you've validated that you're not if you're taking users' data. So in other words, if they're telling you something and you're storing it, if you're persisting the user information, you have to have a disclaimer. So some kind of legal disclaimer. I think that's the only hitch. If it's just a play around app where, you know, like mine, it's just static data and you're not storing anything, it's a lot easier. So you just have to have, I believe that's what it is. If you look at the distribution, it'll tell you, yeah. So they're pretty serious in terms of what exactly is this doing? And they're very aware of the privacy. So this is the thing, you have to provide this if you're the privacy URL, if you're going to persist user data and if it's sensitive data. So it's just something to be mindful of.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm encouraging you guys to play with, you know, play with challenging projects to help with imposter syndrome, but also to spread the word that it is a big thing and that lots of people struggle, and that it helps to know we're not the only ones. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Alexa, so hopefully you'll go and play with Alexa too, because it is a lot of fun on your weekends. Maybe not on a nice evening like now where you want to go for a beer or something, but yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. And thanks for letting me be, I have a, like, you know, an anxiety with talking. So thank you for letting me do this in a safe place. A positive
Absolutely.
experience.
You did great.
Thank you.